Hello, it's Joni Rotten. I have a little article I want to read. I haven't done one of these in a hot minute, but there was a video with, oh, I shared it on the other channel. Dr. Oh, shoot. Anyway, you would know him. He became very famous during the COVID. Anyway, he talks about mast cell activation syndrome, and he's interviewing somebody who is a doctor in this field. And it reminds me that we talked about this disorder many times in the last 5 years or 4 years, and here it is back, coming out now. Finally, it's coming out. It's being openly talked about. It's being written about on a much larger scale than just some here or there things. So I found this article. It's from 2021. It's called Meet the Humble Mast Cell, Identifying the Risks and Understanding the Mechanisms Behind Allergic Reactions to the COVID-19 Vaccine. Now, something interesting about the mast cell, I'll try to share some articles as shorts, just so you can go and see that there is some information there. The mast cell has been linked to evolution and supposedly showed up sometime when we went from fish to mammals, or Cambrian did. Starts to have me asking questions. Now, is some of what we're seeing, again, when we're talking about, I mean, I know this is very tinfoil hatness, but I'm not the only one who is suggesting that we're evolving. So a lot of universities are coming out and saying that we are becoming a new species, that Homo sapiens, as we know, are being, mutating into, or evolving, or whatever word you like to use, into a new species. So we can no longer be categorized in the Homo sapien category. And that's being discussed, that's being asked, that's being looked at, that's being written. Articles and papers and dissertations are being submitted for approval. So it's an interesting idea. And when you're looking at the mast cell, which is a system in the body that is linked to evolution, or linked through our historical past of evolution, I start to wonder. So this article I thought is somewhat easy for me to read. A lot of them are so complicated. I can't say half the words, even though I kind of understand what they're saying, but I found this one to be a little bit easier to read. And as we're having, this is being linked to long COVID. So people who got the flu to start with are showing signs of mast cell activation, as well as people who had the vaccine. And if you were already susceptible, and that goes into your connective tissues. If you were already susceptible to, you could end up having a flare, you could end up having a reaction when you didn't have one before. This goes into our guts. This goes into mast cell is your histamine cells. It's everything that reacts whenever something foreign comes into your body. It creates this reaction. So let's read this. And then just make sure my mic is on. I'd also like to note that since I started this morning, my phone stopped as I was uploading shorts, sharing these. I don't know why. It's never done that before. So, what does that mean exactly? I don't know, but it's just interesting to note. So rather it's an intentional thing because I've got keywords on the screen, or it's just a random fluke event that catches my attention. Maybe it's God saying, this is very important. Take your time, pay attention. I don't know, whatever you want to believe. But let's read on. COVID-19 vaccine allergic reaction have put mast cells in the clinical research spotlight like never before. That's not only because they play a key role in the human immune response, but also because mast cells are at the root of allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis. making them a prime target of inquiry as we try to explain why, in rare cases, COVID-19 triggers an allergic response. The vaccines. Mast cells are found in connective tissue throughout our bodies. That's everything. Your internal organs, your muscles, your skin, your eyes, your ears, everything is a connective tissue. In mast cell disorders, these cells are overly active and they proliferate, resulting in a variety of harmful and potentially life-threatening effects. Your heart is connective tissue. This inappropriate activation of mast cells is considered a clinical disorder, falling into one of two broad categories: mastocytosis or mast cell activation syndrome, or MECAS for short. Mastocytosis is defined as an abnormal accumulation of mast cells in one or more organ systems. In addition to putting a patient at greater risk of anaphylaxis, this systematic disorder can also have adverse effects on other organ systems, including the skin, cardiovascular system, gastrointestinal tract, and bone marrow. And the diagnostic criteria for mastocytosis are well established, and the condition is usually identified through tissue biopsy in combination with genetic and or blood tests. Serum tryptase is a common test that can be used as part of initial workup, but the diagnostic criteria for mastocytosis are described below in more details. If you're new here and you don't like the way I say these words because I'm saying them incorrectly, then please start your own channel. Read these articles yourself with your smarty brain that can say them so fluidly. But we're going to do our best. The World Health Organization, who has a consensus on definitions of various forms of mastocytosis and on diagnostic criteria. The major criteria include histological or immunohistochemical alterations, such as mast cell aggregates containing more than 15 mast cells in bone marrow sections. The minor criteria include cytological alteration, for example, greater than 25% of mast cells, and detection of c-KIT mutations on codon 816 and some other immunophenotypic alterations. These last may include the expression of CD25 without CD2 in mast cells for bone marrow, peripheral blood, or other organs, and total serum tryptase levels persistently anyway. We've learned more about our human body through this than we ever have before. This is definitely been a crash course in biology 101 in the last 4 years. Well, patients do not meet the criteria. Okay, let's just cut to the chase here. But still experience chronic allergic reactions to triggers such as food, prescription drugs, or insect stings that may be diagnosed with MECAS. Although the allergic response can vary in severity, the symptoms of MECAS MCAS typically include hives, swelling, low blood pressure, difficulty breathing, and diarrhea. And of course, we have a big quote here that says, it is important to keep in mind that allergic reactions to the COVID-19 vaccine are rare. They're very rare, quite rare. But we'll only know that after the fact. So it's possible that in another year or two, we'll see a lot more people being diagnosed. As I shared a headline on the shorts here, where, you know, it says doctors still aren't even taking this seriously. I'm telling a doctor that I have mast cell activation syndrome due to getting the vaccine or catching COVID-19, and the doctors still aren't taking me seriously. When I was first diagnosed with this, nobody had ever heard of it, which is why I find it interesting that it is in fact being discussed an awful lot right now. More and more people are vaccinated and statistics continue to evolve, but as of writing this, allergic reactions occur at 11.1 cases per million of the Pfizer biotech vaccine doses, 2.5 cases per million of the Moderna, and fewer. That's who was diagnosed. Okay, let's just be straight. That's who was diagnosed with mast cell. Most doctors still have no idea what it is. Okay, and they're only now learning. Some patients who have reactions appear to have a history of some already things, whereas others do not. And because allergic reactions to COVID-19 vaccines are so rare and the data surrounding them is uncertain, the risk factors and mechanisms of these reactions require further investigation. This is what I was talking about 4 years ago, back in March of 2020, when we were seeing people fainting, POTS. When we're seeing people have, and I said, you know what comes with POTS? Mast cell activation syndrome. These two things they love each other. So if we're seeing one, we're going to see another. And they had no cures. They had no pharmaceuticals. They had no idea how to treat these things. They were considered rare disorders. So rare, most doctors had never even heard of them. Now they're everywhere. And when I'm reading an article that talks about pharmaceutical companies, this is from almost 15 years ago now, talking about pharmaceuticals being irrelevant in the future, that they will be irrelevant. This comes to me from Forbes. This comes to me from the business side of things. I can only think that as a pharmaceutical business owner, I'm going to want some new and rare diseases. I've never gotten a chance to research. How do I get those? Well, I have to make people sick. And what better way to do that than through a flu or through a vaccine? Now I have an abundant supply of people with rare disorders that no one's ever heard of, nor do I have any treatments for. Not only that, they're running to the doctor and they're getting diagnosis. They want to feel special. They want to go on their TikToks and tell everyone that, they have mast cell, they have POTS, they have this, they have that. And it garners attention. They're going to the doctor. They want to show me their Facebook posts where they have 20 medications they're taking. And then somebody in the chat's going to go, well, I have 25. And we have this happening. So it has always been my opinion that part of this pandemic was, in fact, to create a test subject, a lab full of rats, in order to experiment on them and find a future, possibly a very good future. Maybe my frustration is misdirected, because it's possible that being able to obviously being able to cure all ailments, longevity, Peter Thiel, epigenetic research, living forever, the fountain of youth. I'm going to need to study everything, and I'm really going to need to know about the body. I'm going to need a lot of people who are getting diagnosed with this to come into my office so we can try medications on them. We can try to figure out, we can get their blood, we can start breaking it down, we can further break down the human biological systems. And so that is, where I stand. That is fully my position on things. But as you can see here, it talks about the study team will enroll. In other words, it's looking for you. 3,400 patients, of whom 60% have either a history of severe allergic reactions or a diagnosis of mast cell disorder, and 40% will not. So there are their test subjects. The findings of this trial will, in other words, it has not happened yet, provide more clarity around the risks and benefits of receiving COVID-19 vaccines. So they need you to get the vaccine, particularly for people who have allergies or have been diagnosed with already mast cell disorder, which is a Mayo Clinic type diagnosis. So unless you go to one of those specialty type centers, your average doctor is not going to know about this, or wasn't going to know about this. Another thing is that when you do go back and look with this linked to the vaccine, you're going to find very little information. Almost all the articles are going to say that if you have a history of mast cell, if you've already been diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, don't worry. The vaccines are being found to be safe. And so it is recommended that you go ahead, don't forget that you have mast cell where you just randomly have an allergic reaction to who the fuck knows what. 1 minute you're fine, the next minute you're not. Don't ignore that. Get your shot anyway. And that's because we need 3,400 of you for our, you know, for our test, for our, whatever this is, you know, our uh, our evaluation, our research, and that knocked me out. I was not interested. I've already learned that trying new things is not a good idea for me or my body long time ago. Also, mast cell activation syndrome being linked with POTS, and those two things being linked with people who have connective tissue disorders, if you like that word, or mutations, or just have that's part of their makeup. We are highly susceptible to things like illnesses such as mono, flus, Epstein-Barr, CMV. So, these things are already a connecting factor between people who have this diagnosis. It's already almost all of us who have these also have those and have had mono and things like that. So no thanks. But the fact that they're telling us to go ahead and do it again, I thought, is that because you need patients for your studies? I'm not sure. I could be wrong. It's probably a good thing. It's human evolution. Don't be so mean. This is for the greater good. It doesn't matter if you or your children or whatever are used as text subjects. They're doing something for the greater good. And we even heard people in the beginning of the COVID that were openly taking loosey juicies and saying out loud that I'm doing this because I want to help my fellow man. If I die, so be it. Maybe they can learn from me. So it's a very, unselfish thing to do, I suppose, martyrdom type thing to do. It's a very, good thing to do. But I'm not interested. Thanks. I'll let you do it. So anyway, I just wanted to back up this with, a little bit about this and what I see as possibly a factor into why this pandemic happened in the first place. Especially when we're discussing the ideas of whether or not it was a bioweapon or possibly created in a lab, which means that if it's created, they knew, and at least fingers tightly crossed, for some of the outcomes that they were hoping for. And if mast cell and POTS, at least those two, and myocarditis, if these were their hopeful thing, all of which we had no pharmaceutical cures for, all of which we had no medicine for. There was no medicine on the market to cure or treat these. That sounds like a money scheme. Sounds very much smells rich, doesn't it?